procedure. I'd like to offer a warm welcome to everyone joining us tonight. And to those of you joining us online, please keep in mind that the chat function should only be used for technical difficulties or issues, not for discussion. The city offers online access to the convenience, and we will continue this meeting if technical difficulties occur. Please raise your hand or signal if you would like to be recognized. I'll call on speakers in order, allowing people who haven't spoken yet to speak first, and limiting time if necessary. If you're speaking here in the room, you can please come to the front and speak up as much as you can so that Al can hear you and people online can hear you. And if you have any questions about process and procedure, please ask and we'll get it sorted. I want to thank everyone for participating in a civil way. And with that, that takes us to our second item on the agenda, adjustments to the agenda. Manager Sterling Kessler.
Thanks, Mayor. Two related adjustments. I'm gonna ask for an executive session after item. I'm sorry, let me do that in a different order. I'd like to move item 10B until after an executive session related to real estate.
Before roundtable.
Yeah,
Or after.
we can do it after roundtable.
10A, correct?
So I'm gonna move 10A.
10A.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna move 10A until after roundtable and precede it with the executive session.
By an executive session. Any concerns or objections by council? Seeing none, are there any other modifications to the agenda by members of council? Seeing none. Okay, that takes us to our third item on the agenda, which is a mayoral proclamation. Yes, tonight, and I'll read the proclamation and then hand it over to our special honoree today. It says a mayoral proclamation honoring Finbar Chaparro, Santa Fe. Whereas there's something special about the holiday season and the goodness and hope it brings. Whereas Finbar Chaparro, a Berry City resident with spina bifida who uses a tablet to communicate, dreamed of becoming a real Santa by attending Santa school. Whereas despite initial enrollment difficulties, he never gave up on his dream to spread magic, joy, love, and happiness to people all over the world as a professional Santa. Whereas Finbar gained entry to a training school, becoming Santa Fin. Whereas Berry City takes great pride in honoring Finbar's infectious enthusiasm, hard work, and journey to celebrity on Santa Camp, an HBO documentary that changes hearts and minds to embrace diversity and inclusion in recognition that the spirit of Santa is good and transcends differences. Whereas Santa Fe brings joy to children, people with disabilities, people who face adversity, the people of Berry City, and people all over the world. Whereas Santa Fe has been welcomed to holiday events throughout Central Vermont, and tonight we welcome Finbar and his mom Suki and Finbar's dad Bill in their home community, Berry City. Therefore be it resolved this 20th day of December, 2022, that Berry City honors and celebrates Finbar Chaparro and all his accomplishments, and we look forward to seeing him at many Berry City holiday events in the years to come. I'd ask that you guys all.
Hold on, just a moment, get in there, Ron.
Okay.
Get in there.
Get you all.
Thank you.
Do you want to take a picture? I'm taking a picture for the bridge.
Okay, can you say that again?
Thank you for the keys of Berry City. This is a great honor. I have lived in Berry for 11 years.
You say thank you. All right.
Yeah, and I met Finbar and Bill out campaigning, knocking door to door back in February of last year. And it was so great to see you on TV, and also to get you to sign the book about Santa Camp that was published by one of your, I believe, another attendees. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
But then there's more.
All right.
So- I know how busy you've been, and you're like a celebrity. Please don't run for council. Well, actually, it would be okay, but in recent interview, you said that your favorite cookies were vanilla sugar cookies. So if there's 3 dozen. For the record. But if there are any missing, I'll state for the record that they were briefly in the custody of the mayor. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Suki, did you have anything you wanted to share? Not that you have to.
Just, this is such a great honor, and I appreciate it, and I hope that in the next season, we're almost
I
done.
use this device to communicate, so please give me.
We've done a lot in the last couple of months since the movie's come out. It's been pretty amazing, and I think my favorite part is all of the, my daughter Rose created a website for her brother, and we've been getting messages from all over the world. And every state in the country has gone on his website, and these messages that we're getting from other parents like me, or folks with disabilities saying, I wanted to be a Santa, but I didn't think I could, but now I know I can. And that's why we did it. And so pretty exciting. And we also hope that we get to do a little bit of Santa stuff in our hometown next year. So hopefully that- Thank you very much for having us and doing this great honor. It's really awesome.
Thank you, and you're welcome, more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. You don't have to, we're gonna be going through budget lines.
Hey, Ben, I have one of those, and give me a call later, contact me, and I'll tell you all the great things you can do with it.
Well, you've been busy, so I figured you haven't had time to bake. So when I just moved up here,
Yes, sir. And I said,
thank you.
Well, that would take us to, our next item on the agenda is visitors and communications. So this is an opportunity for. Whoa.
Hey.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
So under visitors and communication, it's an opportunity for anybody who wants to speak to an item that is not on the agenda tonight. If you want to speak to an item that is on the agenda, more than welcome to raise your hand while we're taking up that business. Are there any matters for visitors and communication? Councilor Lozo.
That was really great. Can you just quit while we're ahead? Would that be okay? I mean, we're, anything we do, we're gonna ruin it. He just leave. Oh, I get in trouble.
Any other, I see a hand raised, Bert Rose.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for, I'm not feeling well, so I'm not there, but that was really awesome to see Finn and Suki. I know you probably can't control the sound very much, but it's coming across as very garbled.
Can you wait 1 minute as we try to turn up the volume?
Yes. The volume isn't the problem.
No, we can't hear you.
Oh,
That's not your fault. And
I'm glad.
we're having at least I am.
Yeah.
Let me see what I can do. Try again, Bert.
Hi, how's this?
A lot better.
Oh, great. I know it's a difficult room to be in to have sound that's clear, but I think that it's already sounds better. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to all the city workers who've been out plowing and keeping our streets clear. And also just to bring a concern to our sidewalks. And I know that we're in the end part of our budget processing, but I think that over the last few years, we've not added on another sidewalk plow, which had been in the budget a couple of years ago, and would ask you all, because I sent some pictures, we need to pay attention to all the hundreds of pedestrians who use our streets every day. So thank you all. Thank you for the long evening. I'm having a hard time talking, so you're in luck.
Well, thank you for the comments, Bert, and we will be taking up the capital items, which includes rolling stock in January, at a January meeting, so.
Oh, okay.
Just the general fund operational items tonight.
It helps to understand. It's a huge amount of information, but I want you to know, I read through the whole thing today. Have a good night, and I'm going to be listening.
All right, thanks, Bert. Any other items for visitors and communication? All right, hearing and seeing none, that takes us to our consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. One is approval of the minutes of the city council meeting December 13th, 2022. Approval of the city warrants for the week of Wednesday, December 21st, 2022. Clerk's office's licenses and permits, of which we have several.
Yep, food establishment licenses, Espresso Bueno, Basil's Pizzeria, and Capstone Community Kitchen. Food takeout for the 2 Cumberland Farms locations. Food vending for Rise Up Bakery. Entertainment license for the Old Labor Hall. Commercial swimming pool license for Rehab Gym, and vehicle for hire driver's license for Doug Bergeron with J&D Taxi. That one is contingent on police department approval. The chief is reviewing the application and meeting with the applicant tomorrow. So that would be the condition under which I'm bringing it to council, so that it can be approved after the chief has approved it.
All right, and the final item is withdrawal from the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority. Would any member of council like to pull an item from this consent agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. Not full, but the way D is worded, I mean, I believe what council is doing is supporting the manager's recommendation and directing the manager to prepare a question to the voters to withdraw the city of Gary from the CDPSA. It's a, you know, it's not a done deal. You know, we're supporting, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to vote to support the manager's recommendation, but I understand that we have to put that question.
Correct.
So I don't know if we can just do that in the minutes. I don't care if we pull it. I mean, I'd just like the minutes to reflect.
You want the motion to reflect the recommendation by the city manager, which is to move to direct the manager to prepare a question to the voters at the March 2023 town meeting day, seeking to withdraw from Central Vermont Public Safety.
Correct. So we can just amend the minutes when we approve them, Mayor. I think Carol can do that.
Yeah, I'll add it to the consent agenda to that particular item.
Just
Councilor
to
Sherman?
add to that, I had gotten an email today from Donna Bay. And my understanding is that CVPSA is putting off their vote, their final vote until next month, January. But yeah, that's still in motion, but you are correct. It's not a done deal anywhere because they're, you know, just like we discussed last week, pieces out on the, in the ethers, I guess.
All right, so that leaves us with all four items with one license permit conditioned upon approval from the police chief. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So,
Second.
Motion by Councilor Shelby, second by Councilor Stockwell. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? You guys have it. The motion is adopted. The consent agenda is approved. That takes us to the city clerk treasurer report.
Just a couple things, continuing reminder that water and sewer bills are due by January 3rd because December 31st falls on a Saturday and January 1 is a Sunday and January 2 is the legal holiday, so it moves it to January 3, so you get all kinds of extra time to pay your water and sewer bill. So stop by the office to pay or toss it in the mail or toss it in the drop box or pay online, you got lots of options. Secondly, a continuing reminder that information is on the city website about town meeting, the offices that are up for election, nominating petition forms, consent forms, and they have been updated and corrected because I had the wrong nominating petition deadline on there. I apparently can't count to 6. Because it's the 6th Monday before town meeting, and that actually is January 30. So we have it updated. So if you are out collecting signatures, you have an extra week, because I've been telling people the 23rd. So January 30 is the deadline, and the documents are there, or call the clerk's office, and we'll try to give you correct information.
If one was collecting signatures on a paper previously supplied by the clerk, does one have to redo those signatures?
No, because there's nothing on the documents that say what the deadline is for turning in the nominating petitions.
1
And
minute.
a hypothetical, a friend, a question for a friend.
A hypothetical question of a friend person. Hypothetical.
That's it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Clerk Treasurer Bellis? Hearing and seeing none, that takes us to the liquor control cannabis control. I believe we have tonight. No item there. That takes us to item 8, the city manager's report.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple updates for council and for the public as well. We're rolling out a new event application form effective January 1. So it's developed with all our department heads. We'll be getting it on our website, social media, making sure that the folks who are frequent, who hold events frequently are aware of the form. This so that we have a coordinated way of having every department review events that are happening, making sure that we have resources deployed or whether we need resources deployed. So I'm excited about that. Well, like I said, it'll be effective for events after January 1st, and we'll be making sure we get to all our partners, our frequent partners on this.
This is for events on public.
On public,
city property?
Yeah, the city property, and city streets, correct, yeah. We are, so staff very busy here at the Civic Center. It's great for us to be here too, but just a lot of activities. In fact, today, heard from Stephanie and Jeff about a couple new events that were held here this week at the auditorium. So a lot of activity ticking up in this building, which is great news. And so we're keeping the staff very busy on those. A couple of updates regarding our committees. The first is that Clerk Dawes and I are going to host a committee members open meeting law / Zoom training. It'll be later next week. I understand it's a tough week. We may end up having to do another one, and that's fine. I believe January 15th is the
date that the current
executive
Yeah.
action.
is sunset, so.
Yeah. So that what that means is that committees will not be able to hold only Zoom meetings. So there have to be an in-person option. A couple of our committees have been doing only Zoom, so we will be training them both on open meetings law and how to use our equipment. And then just another reminder, our next council meeting scheduled for the 3rd of January, that I want to make sure that interested folks know that we're going to have the agenda item about the committee reset. Still getting feedback from people, so make sure they come and give it to you directly on the 3rd. So just a reminder about that agenda item for that week.
Any questions for the manager? Council Wilson?
When you hope to be finalizing that plan, the committee reset?
So I would have hoped in January, but I think given the level of feedback I've gotten, probably into the early part of next year. I think maybe February, March. I think it'll take a little bit of time. We'll see what the feedback is on the 3rd. My sense is you're going to hear from quite a few members, so a lot of opinions about it. And then we'll have to go through a process of reappointing, depending on where it all ends. We'll have to reappoint people, and they're doing the assessment of how many new seats there would be versus how many people are currently serving. So I can see it going into February.
Yeah, you know, my preference would be that we get the budget and the warnings behind us.
Yeah.
I think I've heard from quite a few people.
Yes.
And I just said, you need to direct your comments there.
Yeah.
To the manager. You know, I just think it's going to be a process, and I think there's going to be a lot of people who will want to be heard.
Yes.
And we need to focus obviously on town meeting day until we get our budget finalized. So I just think trying to deal with those, the budget and the committee reset, I think we'd be asking a lot of you.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, this is another, we want to get everything right, but this is also very important to get right.
Right.
It's gonna impact, hate to have to come back and redo it.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think if we need to take the time that it takes, I think, because of the reasons that we are seeking to do this are also important to also not let it linger, because it is staff time and those sorts of things. So I think it's important to get it both right and to do it. To not let it last too long.
And we've got a warrant, I'm sorry, Carol.
Funny you should ask that. On January 31st.
So,
February 5 by statute, but January 31 is the last regularly scheduled council meeting, at which we approve the town meeting is late this year, it's on the 7th, so that is a little bit of extra time.
my thought would be to push that out, start it in February. You know, hopefully we can do it within the month of February.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Thank you for considering that.
My preference would be to continue on with January 30th, and it's already been going on for 4 months, so.
Oh, I think for the 3rd is for feedback. Yeah, I think that's still, I don't think the 3rd we're gonna land on it, but yeah, I agree that, unless I misunderstood Councilor Lozon, I think it's so important to keep the 3rd for feedback purposes, and to act after that.
Okay.
All right, so that takes us to, and are there any other questions for the city manager? Hearing and seeing none, we don't have any unfinished business, so that takes us right to the budget.
Thank you. So there is, Ryan, if you have not met Ryan, that's why I started specialist extraordinaire. So he's gonna pull up the PowerPoint that was in the packet, and I'll start with that, and then we will turn it over to our line by line. So starting on the second slide, just a summary of the process so far. We began way back September 20th with the kickoff. That's where presented sort of the base conditions we were confronting, asked council for guidance about what we should be targeting at the rate. And so that was our very first action budget-wise back in September. In October, we came to you with the first of the department reviews. Started with my office, general administration, finance, and elections. Followed through with several more meetings with the departments. And the 29th, we also talked about revenues in addition to DPW. And our last budget-related item was 2 weeks ago, where we heard from our partner organizations, ABC, and the partnership. This is, I'm going to go through, you've seen these multiple plans, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but this is just a reminder of where we started, which was what I mentioned at the time as really tough budget math, where expenses were going up and revenues were going down, and that's just the opposite of what you want to happen. So I won't rehash this, you've seen these numbers before. The next slide is also sort of an update. You've seen this one as well. The major changes that happened since that kickoff. The red arrow there is one that worked in the wrong direction. Loss of ambulance contract billing revenue, and in FY24 that actually impacts FY23 as well. A couple of things moving in the right direction, which is we were able to agree with Capstone on a pilot for the Brook Street School, which had one. I'm sorry, an escalator for that property. They never had an escalator than $5,000. So that was positive. And then another positive development is the state of Vermont pilot payments came in. The 23 pilot was plus 35,000 from our budgeted amount. So we carried those assumptions over into 24. So that is good.
Just give me 1 second. Yep. Just gonna share the screen so our viewers at home can see.
Of course. Thanks, Ryan.
That's
Next slide. So more, you've seen this slide as well. I think it's important to keep showing it because I think it really tells an important story. This is not, I think this is probably a similar budget for many municipalities across the country. This is not something that's just very Vermont, but 20 was very hard. That was the crux of the middle of the pandemic. 21 was equally challenging. And so what happened were essentially flat budgets. And so we've been growing. Our needs haven't necessarily changed. In fact, you could argue they've grown. And we're working off of a much smaller base. So every subsequent year, if you really want to look at the blue line is what have been approved budgets, the blue bar, I'm sorry. And so that's where we are. In the orange bar is what would have happened if we've been doing just a predictable 3% increase, just mathematically just 3%, where our base would be today. And then the gray bars are growth at inflation, which is just another metric just for comparison. And so what this picture really tells you is our base for FY24 is probably quite lower than it should be if our budget had been growing at one of these pretty predictable, typical municipal growth rates, which is somewhere between 3% and inflation. So we had a first draft of the 24 budget where together with the department heads, we identified about $290,000 in adjustments vast majority of those, 257,000, were in the form of cost reductions, efficiencies, and re-estimates. And we identified about $60,000 in revenue raisers. Every department was impacted. This was a very collaborative process. I think everybody walked into it and out of it, I think walked out of it feeling much better about than they did walking into it. But I think everyone also walked out knowing that it was deliberative, collaborative, and supported where we had all landed together. One change since we last talked budget on the 6th is I allocated about $41,000 amongst city department heads for restorations. I think that frankly, I think we overextended on some of the reductions we took. And so looking at, a number to get us really to a 5% growth rate, that allowed for some buybacks amongst our department heads. We established a floor of $1,250 per department. And after that, they were allocated proportionally. And I think I'm very proud of what our department heads chose to buy back. And this is something where I gave the leeway to the department heads. And I think that's a great list. I think if you look at what our department head priorities are, I think they largely reflect what we hear from our residents, certainly reflects what I see. Those are the broad categories that the leaders of our departments chose to reinvest money in when they had the opportunity. So I think that was a great sign, and I'm very happy that that's where we put money back in. Next slide. So this is also new from when we last met. So the last meeting we had the Berry Partnership, Berry Area Development Corporation, and Aldrich Library come in and make their budget requests. So just as a reminder, when we presented the first budget to you, we assumed flat budgets across the board. Their requests are listed there next to their row. And what we're recommending is the third column over. So if you look for the partnership, recommending the typical COLA increase, just to account for normal inflationary increases that occur amongst any organization. The ADC had a large budget increase related to the executive director compensation, strategic planning, and the new position. As you can see, we're recommending still the largest increase of any entity that the city funds, but we are focusing on funding the executive director compensation and the strategic planning component of that request. And Aldrich Public Library, as you can see, requested 8%. We're requesting slightly lower than their ask at 4.5%. And this is really to fund what we understood and acknowledged maintenance, repairs, and service contracts. And so we're slightly below what they're requesting. I think I've had a chance to talk to Lauren about this. She's aware of that number. One of the areas that we discussed was some potential underspending. I understand that library operations may ramp up, but we did see some underspending across historical data that they presented. I know she's on today. She may speak to that. So that's another new information since we last met. Next slide. Ryan, thank you. So where are we today before we start our budget seminar? So when taking all into account, with all the changes I just described, we're looking at a 4.13 projected increase in expenses, which I think is frankly quite aggressive in terms of how low it is. It's approximately half the recent rate of inflation. And if you go back to the first slide in the context setting, well, you don't have to write it, everyone has it here. But if you flip back to that, you can see that that increase really just between wages and care could have been swallowed up by just that. So I think these are aggressive. We were very aggressive in trying to keep this low. And then it also translates to a projected, and I want to emphasize, projected 5% tax rate increase. That number will be impacted as you all know, by many factors between now and when that rate is set in August. So.
Hopefully July.
Thank you. So again, emphasis on projected. It also includes, the budget, the 24 budget also includes almost $6,900 as tax relief from our now fully audited FY22 fund balance, and that is the 6,876 is the amount over 5%. So just the bottom line there, you know, we think this is a responsible proposal, as I said, maybe overly aggressive. You can read in the paper, it's below what just about every nearby municipality district has proposed to their, or at least in the drafts I've seen. We made it important to protect key services. I think it was important to establish some manageable increase in non-tax revenue at $60,000. So we feel, I think as a collective staff, really good about where we landed. And then just before we turn it over to the line by, no, you can go down, right, thank you. So before we turn it over to go into the line by line, just want to, you know, some context setting for the seminar. So if you look at our budget, the dark blue wedge of the pie there is wages and benefits, fringe costs of staff. That's really, by and large, untouchable. A lot of that is driven by contracts and collective bargaining agreements. And so we're really talking tonight about really tinkering around the edges of that 33%, which is all the other expenditures. And really, it's not the entire 33%. I just wanted to keep it as simple as possible, but that 33% also includes debt service. It includes other, it includes fuel, but how discretionary really is fuel? I guess we could choose not to heat buildings or drive vehicles, but that's really not too much of a discretionary action. So really, even within that 33%, there's certain limits in terms of what we can responsibly go after. So just want to lay that context, because there's a lot of lines on that spreadsheet that you saw and you received. You know, frankly, many of them are locked in. And so I don't want folks to be surprised if that's some of the responses to some of the feedback we had, is that we just don't have a lot of flexibility on many lines of the budget. And that's, again, not a very thing, that's just municipal budgeting reality. So I think that's it. You know, this is my first budget seminar. I heard a lot about this from the staff as we got going through the process, which is why we tried to recreate the Saturday session as much as possible into this Tuesday night session. But my understanding is that the way it used to work is Donna would pop up the spreadsheet on the screen, which is what she'll do now. And that we used to really just go line by line, wherever people wanted to talk about. We have all our department heads here, hiding in the back, but they're all here, and we can all answer questions. And Don will be handling the spreadsheet up front.
For all the work that we did in this. Councilor Welles.
Yeah, just a couple clarifying questions. Just for the record, I like Saturday mornings. Nice. I did it.
Witty. So I bet staff doesn't agree with you.
All right, so just in the packet that we just got physically here at the table, I have the budget seminar thing. I have the 24 general fund budget template. I have your spreadsheet of changes from that last presentation. And then I have this one with a really small text on it. How is this different than the?
That brings,
Rick did that.
that brings
I get it
it
for him, Roxanne.
Oh, Roxanne.
Okay, that's
up.
I think it's just the budget again.
It is, but it's broken out. So you have the personnel and all the insurances that we can't alter on the right. And then on the left are the discretionary, quote unquote, ones, like our travel, our fuel, all the other items. So it's taking all the same line items, but it's just reorganizing
Oh, okay. Thank you.
into personnel other than.
I'm just like going through the line trying to find the difference.
Is this the same as what we got on Saturday?
So Friday packet included.
Friday.
Oh, the Friday packet.
The Friday packet included the line by line that's up on the screen.
Okay, great, thank you. And then my other question was, I know you mentioned some of the numbers, and I know Montpelier is a little over 7%. Do you have some of the other numbers for surrounding municipalities? I don't mean exactly.
Yeah, I know, I believe the school district, I know it's a little bit different, the school district's around 7. Berlin was in the double digits, I don't have the exact, but they were, at least their first draft was in the double digits. Northfield was up there as well, I believe also double digits last I checked. And I know that it's, that's a tough comparison to
Yeah.
always make, but yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Council Booth?
You want to talk about pet peeves?
But what?
So I'm looking at the miscellaneous on the expenditure details.
Do you have a page number, Michael?
I don't, and I was concerned about that.
For a line number?
Line number is 9130. It looks like it's page 20 of 34.
It's line number 821 as I remember.
820. I was gonna say, I don't have any. Oh, miscellaneous accounts?
So is that being put into the budget or is that? I don't know how that.
Are you talking about this section? The 9130 section?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's part of the budget.
Those are expenses.
Those are expenses.
So we worked in there the Welcome and Warming Center.
Correct.
Yep, that's a new line.
So, and I think I made that comment during, when we talked about that that should be a ballot item. That's my opinion. And I know that I'm outnumbered on that. But
So council adopted and approved the motion for that amount. And I think to change its classification, we need a reconsideration as an adjustment to the agenda. Councilor Stoffel?
Is it possible on the first page, when it's under privates, can we do an escalator with Barry Housing, or we just can't do that?
So theirs is built on.
Setting a contract signed a million years ago.
And based on HUD formulas.
Yeah.
So the HUD formulas explain the increase in FY 22 because of the pandemic, presumably. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have, the formulas are.
So with no active energy committee, is there a reason that stipend was kept in there?
I have that question too.
823.
I think we kept this as just committee stipend.
We've also, anything that we haven't spent in the last few years, we have held that aside for, and we capped it. Cap, but we've kept it in the capital fund for any energy efficiency items. Right?
yeah, back to the Welcome and Warming Center. The money that we allocated was from the ARPA funds from last year. That's what the motion was.
Yeah.
The issue here is that this is being embedded into the budget. So we're talking about the budget. And that is part, it's not, we don't need to warn a different conversation. I'm saying that I don't like it embedded into the budget. And that should be an item that should be in, similar to, Mosaic, all those special items that are out there. This is one that has not been voted on, so it would go out as a separate item.
So the reason it's showing up here is the consensus we believe we heard in the council meeting where we discussed this was that this is an ongoing issue that we're about to provide predictability for our partners who provide that service. And so, that's why we built it, and we built it in as a generic line item, not to the library, not to lock the library in forever. So, that was just the consensus we heard, and that's why it's reflected in that manner.
So was like, as a liaison to the library.
Yeah, okay, sure, I'll mention that. As a liaison to the library views this as a partnership with the city. They just so happen to be the site of this welcome and warming center. So this library does not support, and Director Polk can speak to this if necessary. I don't think it is, Lauren, but if you want to say anything, feel free. It just so happens to be based at the library this year. In future years, it may either not be necessary or be based at a local church or Salvation Army. I'm just spitballing here. But as opposed to question, you mentioned, Mr. Manager, the consensus that you heard. Was there an actual, I'm just forgetting, was there an actual motion to approve by council to approve the allocation
For the current year.
Yes.
In 23.
Oh,
This
yes,
is
yes,
for
yes, okay, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that makes sense.
Okay, then, I'm good, that answers my question.
Councilor Woo?
So BCJC stipend, did you talk to Jeannie about that?
Yes, I have. And that is a contractual stipend related to.
Grant?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we don't have to pay it anymore?
No, we do. It was, and it's related to their leased space, which was a condition of their moving to the current lease space.
But it's zero.
No, it's not.
No,
it's
73.55.
Okay, so I do not have an updated one that I'm looking at. The one that was sent out on Friday shows zero, which is the reason why I was a little.
Did you get a little bit?
I wasn't looking at this, I was looking at the Excel sheet.
I got it.
No, I do have it.
Oh, you don't have it?
I'm looking at the Excel sheet, so the actual Excel sheet, okay, I apologize. And right here, it's right there, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, Michael, I apologize too for assuming FY 23 versus.
No, that's fine. And the other thing that I want. I've got lots of questions about miscellaneous.
Well, let's run through.
All right, so Front Porch Forum, I'm not gonna lie, I did not realize that we were paying now in perpetuity. And shame on me for not saying that.
23 was our first year of doing so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did I fuss about it last year?
Probably.
Probably. I don't know.
So I'm gonna fuss about it again. And I understand that we advertise, or we don't advertise with them, we do use their services. But the whole purpose, if I recall, when we first set up Front Porch Forum, it was we paid a fee and then they continue forward because they were using advertisements. So that's the way I remember it and the reason why I supported it then. And that's the way that Lucas pitched it. Were you on council when we did that?
I was never on the council. I was.
Sorry, you were the mayor. But I can't remember if you were mayor when that came through, but.
So this is FY 23 versus 250, right? Yeah. So it looks like the Council Lozon, that was the first allocation, it was not there when this money started to flow, so.
Okay, right. Okay, so I'm looking, referring to.
So just to.
So it's $250. Okay. Again, I apologize, the one that I'm looking at, I was fussing about it is, because it says $5,000 on the screen. So
Your lines
I don't
must
know what
be-
I'm looking at.
Your lines must be off.
It's the one that was, yeah, I know, I need to refer to this one, sorry. Still $250, I'm still gonna, I that's fine. It's a lot better than $5,000. Okay. You know what, somebody else go, because now I need to confirm what I'm looking at.
I could go.
Councilor Trump.
Line 57, I just want to understand the vacant building registration jump up. I mean, that's great, but why do you think that's gonna happen from 700 to 5,000?
57 on page 234. $5,000 revenue budgeted for FY '24.
We'll let Jen.
I think so, that's
Yeah, yeah.
Previously, vacant building fees were being collected under permits. And in order to track them better, we just pulled them out on their own line. So that's the difference. So not an increase, just it became its own source. Thank you, you're welcome.
Council Ozone?
No, thank you. So 36 meters. I mean, line 36, page 1, meters. I mean, our latest audited, predictably during fiscal year 21, pandemic, everybody stays home, nobody's parking anywhere, everything's closed. And we've seen fiscal year 22, and with caution, I'll call that a normal year. And we seem to be going backwards when I think it was you, Mayor, who discussed an increase in the parking fees, or is it, no, maybe. It was-
Oh, you're kidding me with parking fees?
Didn't you talk about, there was a discussion recently about parking fees, and you said, look, we're cheaper than anywhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
So in all likelihood, we're going to increase those fees a little bit, and yet we're, you know, again, it's not, like you pointed out, Nicholas, this is, at this point, it's a game of inches. You know, that's all we can do is pick around little things, and we're having a discussion about 5,000, 6,000. And Michael, what I remember is I was the one who made the suggestion that we somehow get it into the budget so that we weren't having that belated discussion, you know, having a discussion on December 1st, and it's an emergency at that point. So I said, well, let's plan a little bit. I don't disagree with what you're saying. Maybe put it elsewhere, maybe even, you know, the council can put things on the ballot. What I really liked, I was a pushover for the $6 grand because they had a 50% match. I mean, and as long as we've got the interfaith council raising half the money, I'll be a pushover in perpetuity. But I'm not sure if that question is, if it's best embedded in the budget, because, you know, if it's $6 grand, it's $6 grand, whether there's any match to that or not. And I viewed it, my support, it wasn't contingent, but I was really impressed that the Interfaith Council stepped up and said, look, if the city puts up half, we'll put up half. And my only concern with having it sort of stuck in there is, what if they say no, or what if they say, well, I'm only going to do 3? You know, I looked at it as sort of a supporting a great proposal. Right. You know, we get a 2-for-1 effect on our money. So I would want to have, so Michael, I'm with you, I'd want to have a little bit of discussion in terms of how we present that or how we view it. Don't have an issue leaving it in the budget as long as there's an understanding that, you know, if you want me to continue being a pushover, get me a 2-to-1 match and I'll be a pushover every year. But if that 2-to-1 match goes away, then we might have to reevaluate. That's all.
Yeah,
And that's the way I felt about the 6. And then the last thing, I just, you know, a philosophical discussion about the reduction for barrier development. My concern there is that right now, Barre area development is the only entity that we have that is sort of tied directly to the city that is pushing a substantial housing project. So I guess my thought would be, is there some way to make 2 line items, recognizing, you know, they've achieved a bit of success with Prospect Heights. They cleared a fairly significant hurdle recently. And what I don't want to, you know, I recall City Place when the city actually spent $50,000. I think it was separate amount of money, Carol. We spent $50,000 to hire a lobbyist to make sure we didn't get the rug pulled out from under us for City Place. You look at the tax revenue the City Place is generating today, the tax revenue that Prospect Heights could potentially generate for the city. And I wonder if we're being a penny wise and a pound foolish by if their response is, okay, well, then we can't do as much. And I wonder if there could perhaps be a different line item to restore it up to that 54%, but almost a separate contract saying, hey, this is what we expect for our $25,000. You know, we're funding you because we're impressed with the work that you've done to date with Prospect Heights. And we want to be assured that you're going to continue putting that energy into that project. Is it, I mean, it's all done right now.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a clarifying question? When you say a reduction for, you just mean, they don't have a reduction, you're just talking about not giving them the full.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
They
I just wanted-
requested 54%.
Yes, I just want to make sure I understand.
And the manager felt that he needed to pare that down, and like I said, normally, I may not disagree, I'm just concerned that, you know, if we reduce the resources and their response is, okay, then we've got to put less time into these projects, would we be better off, even if we used our funds, we'd be better off fully funding them, but perhaps with the understanding that we're fully funding you, or we're approving your 54% increase, but we look at it as almost two separate contracts. You know, literally would have something with them to say, we're giving you this extra money because we want you to have the resources to drive this project forward, which would have significant, you know, 100 homes. That's a significant amount of tax revenue.
So,
And rent. So that's just a philosophical discussion. Give Nicholas a chance to react to it, and Don a chance to react to it, and say, well, how do we pull this off? And maybe it's an ARPA discussion and not even a budget discussion.
so, thank you, Counselor, and I, you know, you're on the back up, but if you, this, what we propose to fund, I believe is the core essence of the ADC, which is it's not really a big entity, right? It's the executive director and the board and their rent. So we are proposing to fund the amount that covers the executive director and their strategic planning. What's not funded is a marketing position. And so I think the proposal, I think, does try to recognize that the core of the ADC is continued. And I believe the executive director has done great work specifically on that project. And so I think it's important. That's why that's what those numbers tie to, the 15.3%. You know, I think there's a couple things, just thoughts about the EDCs, that of these three entities are the only one that doesn't have any non-municipal resources and revenues. And I think they do a lot to support rightfully private entity, but there's no specific skin in the game, financial skin in the game, and they're the only one of these entities. You look at the partnership, I think correct me if well, I don't have Tracy's PowerPoint with me today, but I believe she generates more from some of her activities than she receives from us. And Aldrich is almost a third. So we are funding the core function of the ADC. I would say between ARPA and operating that I would argue against ARPA, because the piece here that's the delta is really the long-term personnel cost that is not suited well to ARPA. So just those are the thoughts on that. Just a quick comment on the 6,000. I think one of the, to me, one of the takeaways was warming is not going to be, we're far from the time when warming is not an issue in Vermont. And so next year, I thought my takeaway was it would be prudent to plan to have those resources in the budget, because we know at least next year that it's going to continue to be a challenge for us. So instead of scrambling for resources, I thought it was important to have that already sort of know that we're going to have to pay it. So that just another, feedback there. And then Don, on the parking meters, I'm going to throw it in your court. You probably have more of our methodology to Councilor Lozon's first point, which was the potential increase.
Yeah, the question I had, because the budget, this report doesn't show us the year to date, so of the current year, so it's, and I don't know whether that played into the number that we put in here for the proposed in the 24 budget. It's line 36.
So I think what we did is we did the average between the 2 years, because that was 70,500.
Thinking, yeah.
And then we proposed increasing it to 15, a quarter for every 15 minutes, and that's it straight across the board. So that was
with the things that are going down.
The question is the number gonna go down?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we're also taking into consideration is we've got less people parking in the city, and I realize that we're looking at the audited number for 22, and it looks pretty healthy. But I am concerned that we certainly are seeing less cars being purchased. And we seem to be seeing less people, there seem to be more open spaces, and we were just afraid of being overly optimistic.
So year to date, as of, this was ran on the 14th, we collected just a little over 39,000, so 60% of our budget in 25. So, yeah.
Yeah, so, 77, you could add another 5 and I wouldn't start to get hives, but it might, if it was higher, much higher than that.
Don, can you actually forward me the Excel sheet? That's what I wanted. We got an Excel sheet on Friday and sorry. Thank you. Easier. for
So-
me to do.
Let me ask this, would staff be opposed to bumping up the projected parking revenue based on
This is
the past audited amounts and based on what they're observing on the ground?
If they're recommending against it, I'm fine with that. I just want to just.
I'd be comfortable with 80.
Yeah,
I'd be
I heard the
comfortable with
80
80.
around.
So,
All right,
You got that though?
anybody opposed on 80?
Rounding it to 80?
I just covered half your $6,000, Michael.
What? I was not paying attention.
Smile and wave, Counselor, smile and wave.
I'm in the process of being bright, so.
Carol says you're going.
That means the process isn't over.
Hey, Joe, why did we would struggle with the state of Vermont for pilot? Was this just offered to municipalities?
Yeah, I think it just comes in the report, right?
One of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that the money some of the money that's collected through pilot or through local option taxes feeds into pilot. And so the more communities that come on board with LOTs, the bigger the pool pilot money gets, and it gets shared across the board. So we're actually getting some of that 30% admin fee back in additional funding from the state. So it will be interesting to see whether there is a lessening in the out years, whether, I don't believe they used any federal ARPA money or in the calculations of pilot, but we certainly have seen it in other things where, they gave with the FY22 hand and now they're realizing, ooh, that source of revenue is gone. And so we'll see that when they set the tax rates for the education.
Did you hear from Mr. Delvance, almost Delvance, regarding the increase in the over the road fee?
No.
Yeah, I did. His concern was, I said, Tom, we're working like heck to try to get these fees to go away. And he said, for us, it's not so much. He said, we usually have a presence in the municipalities, but he said, for my company, they truck all over the state. He's like, Tom, it's just an administrative nightmare. Multiply that.
Overweight
The
fee.
overweight fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was going up from, it wasn't.
It's creative. It was gonna be creative.
It would be creative. Right now, we got collected. It's $5 for each individual vehicle. It's $10 per fleet. So it's, I think we only put, what, $600 or something? It's a very small amount. And I know that they're working towards creating, what they'd like to do is create a statewide process so that they don't have to file paperwork and write $8,010 checks to all 251 states.
So I told him, I said, Roland, if you want to come in and address the council, you can certainly do that. His issue was just, you're creating this, and he said, we're working like heck to try to do something different. And he said, our issue is not the $600. Our issue is He said, when you're my company, multiply that by every municipality in Vermont.
Right.
And it's an administrative nightmare to write a $10 check to the city of Barry. So, you know, and they do pay significant taxes on the facilities, they are raised here. So, you know, I hear what you're saying. So what I'll do is I'll just tell him he can come and next time we do a budget thing, he can just come and speak to the council.
Yeah. I definitely like that, seeing the number of trucks that are on the roads, and it's not Belmont's trucks. I think they're good actors and they're bad actors. That impose a lot of costs on the taxpayer, obviously the city of Barry, and a small permitting process can help defend the city's infrastructure, so.
But it's $600. I mean, seriously, you know, if that's the concern, then let's really do something and charge proportionate to the use, but.
I think the law, right, it's set by state law.
Yeah.
So my question is something that I kind of proposed to one of our representatives a couple of years ago was enforcement. You know, the $600 fee, how are we going to really enforce these vehicles? And maybe our police chief who's here could answer that, because I don't want to create an ordinance or a permit issue where we don't have a way to enforce it. And I want to make sure that we do enforce it properly if we do establish that. So I'm just curious how we would go about enforcing that.
I could certainly.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, chief.
No, no problem. To answer your question, honestly, it would be hard to enforce that. You need truck scales, if you're gonna do the weights, or, you know, stop them and check to see that they have their permit decals. And that's burdening already overburdened officers with all the calls and everything that they're doing with traffic enforcement. Anyway, there's a lot of trucks in the city. So it would be hard to enforce.
We're issuing permit decals for a program that generates $600 of revenue.
Well, I believe, don't they put the things on the side of their truck? I could be wrong on that.
I'm not aware of there being permits.
Then we would need to figure out how.
So you wouldn't have anyway.
Correct.
So, but to be clear, the city does own these scales, right now.
Yeah.
And we have done this before, we stopped them, as I understand.
No, we had, and this goes back a ways, it was actually Officer Flory who in the summertime would switch from the school resource officer to the overweight vehicle officer. He was looking for the vehicles that, because of GPS, and I followed them home almost every night, a tractor trailer that goes up from Route 14, takes a light right onto Hill Street and goes up that big hill and then connects with 302. He's illegal. He cannot drive on any truck, can't drive on the road. And that's what Jason was doing in the summer months. And we did used to get some revenue.
And I think that'd be a really effective intervention for, you can already see that's been paid, 2 years ago, the roads are probably 5 inches deep.
Yep, I agree.
Overweight vehicles that are now gonna have to go back on the taxpayers of the city of Barry to repave that street. It's a small intervention, and I think word gets around. But to me, this is obviously, I'm close to this issue, but it's more of an ordinance discussion. And this is a prospective $600 item, whether or not we do it or not, and then just give it the budget to move $600 around. But,
No, I just don't see, I agree with Councilor Gearing, I don't see how we're going to be able to enforce, I think of Abenaki, I think of D&C Transportation, I think of so many companies throughout the state that do drive on our roads.
Let me
How
pose the
they
question this
know?
way: if somebody doesn't have a permit and they're on a street that they're not supposed to be on,
No,
What's the
those are
police
two issues. Those are two totally separate, distinct issues.
and that's the
You
question. I'm
cannot
asking.
drive a tractor trailer on
Yeah,
Nelson.
Councilor,
You can't drive on Orange.
that's the question on it. So if a truck
Yeah.
is on a street that they're not supposed to be on.
Yeah.
And they do not have a permit to be driving in the city of Barry, what's the response from the police department?
The police
It
department.
would be ticketed, and then there'd be revenue.
They have no way of knowing. I mean, what I'm saying is that I don't disagree with your premise, but I don't think this is going to be efficient or effective. Because I think the problem is that a trucking company based in South Burlington is not going to know that they have to pay $5 to register a truck to drive through the city of Barry. They're just not gonna know, so they're not gonna pay it. Now, Roland Bellavance will know because he's right here. He's local, he reads. Now, if that same truck gets lost on GPS and goes down Orange Street, oh no,
Well,
permit or no permit, well, Nelson Street, if they go down Nelson Street,
I think it's
they are getting a
this is an
ticket.
ordinance conversation,
Right,
and I'm here to represent the people of Barry City, not
Same here.
truckers, in South Burlington. Bill,
If I might, I want to kind of amplify what the chief explained and then also give a little bit of insight. So this permit isn't based on necessarily an actual loaded weight. It's a maximum weight of 24,000 pounds, and it has to do with the pavement structure of the streets. And so any empty 4-axle dump truck weighs between 32 and 34,000 pounds, empty. And with certainty, you can look at it, see the axles, and know that weighs more than 24,000 pounds by visual inspection. It will have a registration that says its unladen weight is between 28,000 and 32,000 pounds. If I look at an unladen semi-tractor, its weight is going to be between 22 and 31,000 pounds. And it will be evident by its visual character. If it has a trailer attached to it, it will exceed the 24,000 pound weight limit, and it will be listed on its registration. And with those kind of evidentiary findings, you don't have to wait. So there's a piece here that is actually visually determined. And then there's a piece where somebody's driving a standard 6-tire truck, and it might weigh 28,000 pounds, but its unladen weight is going to be 11,000. And the chief pointed out really clearly that until you weigh that, you can't touch it. You can't touch it. And so the cost of an enforcement program, if you were going to try to capture everything, would make the $600 pay off. And at the same time, it isn't necessarily those 18,000 or 20,000 pound trucks that really hurt our streets. It's the 50 to 80,000 pounders. So a legal 5-axle semi-trailer can weigh up to 80,000 pounds by the bridge formula. And it can drive on streets. But this permit program is designed to allow municipalities to limit and affect. And so one of our issues is that any class 2 town highway, we mentioned Hill Street earlier, that's a class 2 town highway. It has to be a 24,000 pound truck limit. Anything else we can post down. So we could keep them off of Camp Street. We could keep them off of Woodland Drive. We could keep them off of Granite Street. But the problem becomes, in terms of revenues, it's a small fine with a D, not an E. And in terms of enforcement, there might be a revenue that far exceeds the $600, which is the permit fee. And I would honestly say I've never looked at what value, if you were to look at a subset of all the trucks out there, that could be visually determined to weigh more than 24,000. What percentage is that? Because then there's a ratio of them you're going to capture, and you're going to get that violation. And again, if it's a municipal ordinance violation, you see more of that, and if it's a state law violation. So it's complicated. I'm sorry.
so we're gonna do all of that for $600.
well,
I mean,
I-
why not just do another point drop?
It's not about the revenue, it's not about the revenue, Tom, it's about defending your infrastructure. So, potential fees, fines when people violate the standards that we expect people to operate on our road systems. The state police fines, I think, are in the $2,000-3,000 range. That's a lot of revenue because they recognize, the state takes its infrastructure very seriously. And they recognize that the wear and tear is on the backs of taxpayers. And that's what, I think that's what this is about. And I support the $600 because I recognize there's a lot of potential cost saved in the capital budget and potential revenue if there are violators driving where they shouldn't be.
But we will host the roads, right?
I'm confused. If staff is saying that it would be an administrative nightmare for $600, I guess I'm confused on how we're gonna see an increase when staff is saying that it's actually gonna take away, like, I understand that one truck that's, going on the back road or whatever, but I would much rather see my police officers dealing with the domestic abuse, well, not across the street, we don't have any problems with, actually, I think we did have one a couple of years ago, but, I would much rather see an officer dealing with that than, a random truck on a back street.
All right, so let's done this. Is there a motion to remove it? Or Councilor Watson?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, well, there's a difference between the administrative nightmare and a challenge to enforce. I think that's with our wording here. We didn't hear that it would be an administrative nightmare. We heard it would be difficult. And I look at this program, we also just heard that the $600 is a starting point. We just heard from staff that they would not be surprised if the revenue exceeded $600. So I think that I look at this like we had the vacant building ordinance a couple of years ago. That was a new ordinance with new revenue coming in. We weren't sure how much it was going to amount to, but we knew we needed to do something about vacant buildings. So we did, and as such, we have this new $5,000 lovely line 57. So I understand your point, Councilor Woods.
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought you said 55,000.
no, that
I'm like,
that would be lovely, but then we have a bunch of so
Yes, you're welcome.
I see this as a starting point of a program that says that we are going to take the upkeep of our streets very seriously, because I understand your point, Councilor, that if this only raises $600 but costs $2,500 of administrative time, that's a net loss. You are correct. But at the same time, repaving Hill Street every 2 years also costs the taxpayers a ton of money. So once you add in the infrastructure upkeep money, you can't just look at this as just $600 right now. That's just not, this is a starting point.
So the audited for 2022 is 700 for the vacant building. So I mean, I know that we budgeted 5,000 for it.
Well, because
But
that's,
it's a separate line.
no, that it
Okay.
moved from permanent. The money just moved.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're recognizing it as its own line now. So that we can track it directly.
Right. But does the expenses for the program outweigh I mean, I know the reason why, that's, I mean, I don't really care. I was listening to staff was saying that, hey, how about we not do this, so.
Our roads aren't
I think-
posted now. I just want to understand something. Our roads are not posted. So in other words, you can run a 63,000 pound fuel truck on any street you want in the city of Barry.
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
And that's why I take this issue so seriously, is because we've underinvested, the city is underinvested.
They hired Jason.
The residents recognize this. There's police authority to address the issue. And we defend our infrastructure by taking the abuse of it, unreasonable use and abuse of it seriously. Councilor Deering?
2 points. First point is, I kind of also want to look out for the individuals visiting our community. Route 302 is very central, and many people drive through our community, and I would feel really kind of horrible for those individuals to violate this ordinance and then have to face the repercussions because they didn't live in Barry and didn't know about it. That's my first point. My second one is that last year, we talked about the 1% tax and making sure that people who don't live in our community pay their fair share. I remember you specifically said that. And I support that. But I don't support the same argument with the same thing, meaning that, you know, the people that are using our roads, well, not only do they need to pay the 1% that we've added, but now we're gonna have the additional permit. I mean, I'm for the permit process, but I think that it needs to be vetted and just kind of thought out more thoroughly. And that's my opinion.
Mr. Stockwell?
I think we need to protect our roads in any way that we can, and that the greater danger people coming to Barry is that they can't get through the roads, and that they get a flat tire and they go in a pothole. That seems to be far worse, and that's the more average story. So if we can do something that keeps our roads in better shape, yeah, you know, it's not, and we have other ordinances that are going to be extremely difficult to enforce, like the dogs can't defecate on the sidewalk. I just want to say, I know that one's not enforced. But this seems like a good starting place, and I really think what I get complaints about is the condition of our roads. We can make it better, let's give it a go.
And just to respond to one of your concerns, Counselor, here, the average passenger vehicle would not be subject. These are for, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
This is designed for large scale.
Professional license.
Yeah.
Councilor Shalom?
I also think that some of the other communities aren't hit as hard as we are. We are we're a trucking road. And I think there's something to be said for that being respected, not only for the truckers, but for us in terms of they should abide by it. You know, my little piece of Camp Street is not too big, but I see semis going up that thing all the time. I'm like, what do you need to put a semi on Camp Street for? That's outrageous.
So maybe Don can clarify for us, but, so this is a revenue item, it's $500. Council says this fees every June, July, right, for all the fees. But even if this might take some enabling
Well,
ordinance.
the fees are set by statute. The city doesn't set them. The statute says $5 for individual vehicles, $10 for fleet. So we don't have any opportunity to change those.
But the council right now is really having a policy discussion on whether or not this is the right policy. And so it sounds like this is already something enabled by statute that council would then need to act, take policy action to start doing, or something that is already enabled, but it is just renewing.
We haven't done it. It hasn't been imposed by the city of Barry during my tenure and before, so.
And you have full legal authority by the state statute.
Right.
It actually makes this payable to the municipality by state law.
Okay.
So it's fully legal, but the city would have to adopt the issues of the program.
So that what I'm hearing is that we can take this up as a policy discussion.
And then there's a way to, if I recall, I did a little bit of research, you let the state know, they then put the information on a page that trucking organizations then access, because the form is there. Every year, I get at least half a dozen applications and $5 checks or $10 checks made out to the city of Barry, because they, you know, administratively, the trucking companies send them to everybody. And I send them back, because we don't, you know, we don't have that program in place here in Barry City. So we would put the information with the state and we would start collecting the fee.
But and that was just something I wanted to the discussion, which is that I think it'd be easier to be sympathetic if there weren't already a web of local ordinances and municipalities that have these fees, and so the trucking companies, I think, have a responsibility to keep up with that, and we would be another of a patchwork that, you know, have to do it. And maybe there is a better statewide solution, but I think until that time that there's a lot of other places that are taking advantage of this ability.
Council Booth?
Yeah, at $600, I don't really care. We can have a policy discussion later on. And, you know, from that, I'd say make a motion to take a small little break, like a 5-minute break, so that we can enjoy the pizza that just randomly just showed up. Like a half an hour. An hour ago.
There's a motion to recess. I don't think that's a debatable motion.
Well,
Second.
I think it does require a second.
I
We
guess,
have a motion to second to recess for how long?
well, I said 5 minutes, but maybe we need 10, I don't know.
Okay.
You said 5.
I said 5.
I've got 500 pizza waiting for me at home, sorry.
Alright, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it.
So can we still talking over, so which department will process?
All right, so, that takes us back to just talking about other general fund items. Any other requested changes or motions?
You know, it's been at 50 for a long time.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
We're on line,
It's got two lines, it's got a,
829.
Yeah.
that's the expense side, and then it's also got the revenue side.
125.
I guess one of the things that we thought is, we never changed it because it's a complete pass-through. You know, the way it's been handled up to this point in time,
Gotcha.
you know, the money comes in, that exact amount gets transferred out. So,
Okay. No,
Council, on your point about thinking about BADC funding, I definitely like the idea of some form of grant agreement with results-based accountability for things that the city thinks is a priority. And certainly a good grant. My experience is that a good grant writer can bring their salary home 10 times over, and I think that municipal officials like Chip Sawyer, St. Albans City, Warren Blanchard, South Carolina, Tom Bass, the town of Berlin, and there's a lot of the key rainmakers I know for municipal governments have been community development officials embedded in city government. But if we don't have that model, and I think in part because we haven't created a budget in the past that pays an amount to attract that type of position, and we've had so many unfunded positions. So I recognize your point about, maybe PABC could pull off more rainmaking function for the city of Gary under a specific grant agreement, but that's not what they proposed to us. They proposed more marketing funding, and so I would go with what they wanted, and even then I still hesitate to fund the strategic planning, given that they have fund balance, and they've chosen to spend a lot of money on marketing and not the strategic planning. But I'm willing to go with the manager's recommendation.
well, I'd like to hear more from them. Maybe we can ask them to come in again and ask them the tough questions. But, like I said, my point is simply, and I'm not sure that, like a lot of departments, I mean, we have people in the city of Gary who have very specific titles, but they do a lot more than that particular job, and we rely on them. So, my question for BADC would simply be, well, what will the effect be? If we don't fully fund this request, can we expect lesser, and it would, the answer would seem to be yes, but I'd just like the opportunity to speak with them and make sure, for lack of a better term, we're not cutting up our nose to spite our face.
Councilor Bear?
So as the council liaison to BABC, I kind of have to echo what Council Lozon is saying in some of the funding requests for BABC. I do feel that they play a very important role in our community. They're constantly working to bring businesses to our area. Yes, they do work with Barry Town, but the majority of the work that they do is in Barry City. Particularly in Ward 3, I know that the Prospect Heights project just got named top 5 for the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. Their list of projects they want to do. And I know that BADC was very influential in that, and even speaking to Carl Rinker this afternoon, there's even more stuff in the works there. So I really like to see, I see the 54.1% request on their behalf and the manager's recommendation of 15.3. I'd like to, as Councilor Lozon suggested, bring them in and see if we can meet somewhere in the middle. Because I don't necessarily agree with all of their budget request stuff, but I do feel that they play a very important role in our community of bringing businesses and keeping businesses. A lot of the stuff that we don't see that's done behind the scenes, that I see as a council liaison to this committee or to this organization, and find that they're very, very valuable. And we don't really just see a lot of value that's there sometimes.
Councilor Wilson?
So as always, I am willing to listen and I would not object to bringing BABC in so that other members of council can ask their questions. However, in years past, and I'm not, this is how it's always been done, so this is how we should continue to do it kind of person. However, in years past, the library partnership and BABC have come in and council has regularly adjusted them between 2 and 4 to 5%. Those are typically the kinds of, generally speaking, those are the kinds of increases for these 3 organizations that come in. And we've already increased the library asked for 8, they got 4.5. The ABC, as you mentioned, asking for a little over 50 and getting 15. We're looking at a significantly lower, as of right now, significantly lower projected tax rate than our neighboring communities. And the economic impacts of the pandemic are still raging and hitting working families, families with children, et cetera, very hard right now. So it would, I'm just letting the rest of the council and whoever may be listening know that it will be a very hard sell for me to go anywhere over the 15% that we are at right now. Because I support this 15%, but it is very high compared to where we've been in the past, and we haven't had a Prospect Heights project in the past, and I acknowledge that, which is why I said I'm willing to listen if questions want to be asked, but that would be a very hard sell for me to think that that is where we need to be putting more money.
Councilor Boone?
Yeah, I think having someone come in is a pretty good idea. Asking the ABC to come back in is not a bad idea. I will say that Councilor Lozon, what was it, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, where we significantly increased the library's budget. It was a really large increase, and then we put in a perpetual increase from that point, which got them up to where they are now.
I would also like to have that minute, and I would want to know, I would really like Prospect Heights to happen. That would be so exciting. What do they need to make that happen?
And if I just may, I mean, I think that they're doing great work on that project. I'd be hard pressed to believe that this going from their request to 15 is gonna reduce that, because as I mentioned, it's not like a big organization. It's really traditionally been one person. What's not funded here is an additional person that frankly was hired without our understanding was hired sort of in the interim period between two executive directors. So I just don't want council to think that this budget in any way jeopardizes Prospect Heights, which I'm also equally excited about, because they had one executive director before, they'll have one executive director today, tomorrow. So absolutely, like, I think, me, I'm happy to have them here. I'm not objecting to that. I just want to make sure that council is aware that I wouldn't propose this reduction to their request if I thought it would jeopardize it.
But we could also put it on the ballot as a line item as well. Just as a.
Well, we have a policy on how things come about. I would recommend we stick with our policy on that. Which is that people want ballot items, unless you're putting it in their budget.
Well, I mean.
Yeah, it's either in the budget or it's a voter line item. We have a policy on voter line items.
That, I'm just gonna point out that when I mentioned the warming shelter, that was not the first thing that was mentioned. But that's okay, but we can move on. We're
And
gonna
there
have
has been
something.
precedent of just putting things on the ballot.
Right.
Council has that authority, so. you
Yeah.
have to think.
I told you we go down to last. I told you that. Move for findings. Second, I
What?
moving for findings for executive session.
Oh, okay. But what's-
Which
what's this
basically
for?
means this is ruining Christmas. I'll work hard next week and in January. So I'll move for findings.
Oh, to.
Pick it as a nice agenda item.
So basically,
Okay,
I'm
so
done.
we're
Point one.
done with the budget.
Well, I
That's
think,
what you're saying.
are you looking for a motion?
I don't motion.
Yeah.
So,
To approve budget?
To approve it? Well, we're not there yet, but.
move for, do you really want a second? Because I will.
Yeah, I think we're good for tonight.
There's
We
no
had a few
motion.
conversations, but.
Let's see if we can, wrap this up. So it sounds like there's gonna be, an invitation for BADC to come back in. One thing that, just thinking big picture about the budget, as I'm thinking about, there's been a lot of emphasis on infrastructure in past conversations. Council was talked about housing. And as we think about the capital budget that's coming next, the way this budget, I think, interplays with that budget is that there needs to be capacity to move infrastructure projects. And I think we can look at some of our infrastructure and realize that the paving budget's been underfunded, other capital improvements have been underfunded, and then we haven't had good luck getting building capacity with $100,000 allocated last year. So, I mean, the thing that I'm concerned about is making sure that there's enough project management for infrastructure projects. And I would much prefer, if any increase are going to occur, that go to that, and instead of an outside organization for potentially another half-time person. I know two changes I talked about earlier, but I know there were bigger shifts this year, is thinking more about how do we manage the enterprises of parking and cemeteries. And I know in the past, they were separated out as enterprises. I think there's a lot of value to that, in that you can track how much subsidy something they should be running as an entrepreneurial venture, and covering its costs, because there is a particularized benefit. And although, it's not something for this year, I do think it's something for longer term, and particularly thinking about those non-tax revenues that have been going down, and trying to find those opportunities to get those back up where they can, so that there's less burden on our city's taxpayers. So those were just my big picture thoughts for future years, really. So if there's no other changes, is there a motion as recommended by the manager?
No, I'm not there yet. We do next, we don't have to warn it, we don't have to approve it.
No, he has to make-
January, right?
We have to make a motion with the manager asking for one, and I'm asking if there is a motion.
I'm just not there yet.
I will just vocalize that I am there. I'd be happy to make that motion now. I'm not going to, because I want to give the rest of the council time to ask their questions. I would underscore to the rest of the council how much I agree with the mayor about the fact, and with the manager said that the BABC money is not. The BABC 54% is not directly tied to the Prospect Heights project. The money that they need to implement that project is currently in the budget that's presented.
So it sounds like if there's a motion.
Yeah, I guess if there's no more, I mean, that's okay, we do have time, I think, what I have to take away, we made one change to parking meters already, Don already reflected. We're gonna have the ABC come in. I think for us, it would be helpful to know if there's other things we need to be working on in the interim, or if this is just a matter of waiting until the last meeting before coming back.
I'm good.
I'm good. I don't have to.
With the small change that we made tonight, the projected tax increase is 4.97. Went down just a little bit.
I'll have some, but I'll make sure I put them in writing and they'll be well in advance so they can be considered. The other thing I would like to see is just the capital side of, I'm seeing only part of the budget, so there's no way I would vote tonight. You've done a good job, don't get me wrong, but I gotta see the whole thing because that's how I know ultimately how it affects the tax rate. So I would prefer to, my preference would be to go through the capital side of stuff and then do them all.
And I think we're on target for the 10th.
Okay, perfect.
All right,
Thank you.
so that takes us to item 10A, which is the
Preceded by an executive session.
Move for findings.
Second.
motion for findings, second by Council Walzella, and this is related to real estate.
Real estate.
Yeah, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No, and personnel, I'm sorry,
Real estate and personnel.
and personnel.
Fine with the second.
I'm with the seconder, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and is there a motion to enter executive session? Motion by Council Stockwell, second by Council Wassenbach, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
I think we can let our departments go home.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Stay some pizza.
Stay in the hall.
Have to go to a breakout room.
There you go.
Now what?
There.
Is there a motion to exit executive session
So
at
moved.
8:20?
Second.
Motion by Shellwell, second by Wozniak. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Guys have it, we're out of executive session. Is there a motion to act on the matter of real estate we discussed?
I'd make a motion to approve the sale of 22 Hill Street to Habitat for Humanity for $1, and to authorize the mayor and the manager to negotiate and execute purchase and sale agreement, transfer documents, and loan terms.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. That takes us to the
And
last
I'm
two
going to
items.
record Counselor Stockwell as being recused from the discussion.
And the reason is that Councilor Stockwell serves on the board of an organization party to the transaction. That takes us to upcoming business. So our next break, we have a holiday break, so you get a week off, which I'm sure is exciting for staff, as it is for us. And then we're gonna be back January 3rd, right after the new year. We're gonna get the committee update, where maybe we'll be looking at some budget items. And then on the 10th, we have capital and ARPA. Any other previews of upcoming business? Those are the big ones. Okay. That takes us to roundtable, and I'll start with Councilor Chabot.
I'm going to pass.
Councilor Deere.
I'm gonna say that I had an amazing evening last night, enjoying time with our city employees as well as some fellow council. Just a blessed time to really celebrate the holidays, and just thankful for all the things and people that we have in our community that step up and help people. The Christmas for Kids program really is just been a blessing as well. All these things going on in this season. So just lots to be thankful and blessed about.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Booten.
Last night, the employee appreciation holiday dinner, it was amazing. It was great to be able to meet a lot of those folks that have been on city council for 12 years and haven't really met them, and I wasn't able to go to the holiday dinners before due to them being during the day and changing into the night. Also got to meet their spouses, which was really awesome. Got to meet Jackie, which was great. She came up to me and she's like, "It's like I know you." I'm like, "I don't know you." But no, it was really awesome. I do need to apologize to city council. I did not email you guys about wrapping gifts on Saturday, so I do apologize for that. That was a derelict in my duty. I didn't know if there was, I know. I didn't know if we were gonna have to wrap until like, I think it was Thursday night after Renita had done her portion of it. So I apologize, folks. And the wrapping is done now, which is really awesome. And I feel like I'm missing something, but I'm gonna pass. Oh, Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year.
Councilor Willow.
Pass.
Councilor Stockwell.
Do we skip upcoming business?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
You can, you can.
Yeah, you rattle a few things off.
Yeah.
And that was-
We didn't skip it, yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Just
So,
look at it.
I was looking at Ideal, and I was thinking we should invite someone from Ideal to come speak to council at some point. And Shalane Suriyama Rana, I think might be a good person to come and just explain the program. Okay, here's that upcoming business. Next. I won something in a raffle at the library. Okay, the library trees review, that was gorgeous. But I won a little tree, so that was even better. And I attended a chamber breakfast, this one, Chamber of Commerce breakfast this morning with the Let's Grow Kids presentation. I have to say, it made me really sad. I wanted to be outdated. I wanted them not to be facing the same issues we were facing 20 years ago. But really, still underfunded, still not much of a profession for anybody who's gonna go into it, still not enough. Same old story. So that was really disheartening actually in many ways. On a happy note, now I should have done that and then done the tree. But a happy note, happy holidays.
Yeah, I was sad to have missed, similar to council meeting in the past, I haven't been able to attend, there because of work obligations and this time it's personal obligations, so I was very sad to have missed that. But while I was traveling and while I was gone, we had asked one of our neighbors to stop by and just throw the mail inside the house while we were gone. And after the snowstorm, I asked, just drive by the house and make sure there's not a tree in our living room or something, and not only did they do that, but they snowblowed our driveway, so that when we came home, that was all taken care of, and it was just a nice little reminder on the holiday season, the great community we have in there, and the great neighborhoods that we have. So I was very appreciative about that, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Merry New Year.
I'll start with first, a warm welcome to our new IT employee, Star. Great to have you. A huge congratulations to our Argentinian fans. We got won the World Cup, and what a game it was to see that. I had an event to go to, and I was, waiting for this game to happen, but I stuck around to the end. I'm going to give a shout out to Council Lozon for his motion to recognize Porter Walbridge for his Eagle Scout achievement. That was December 17th. I went to the ceremony at the Masonic Hall Temple, and it was a great ceremony. And he had a lot of family and friends there. Our incoming sheriff, Mark Pullen, attended, and just a great event. After that, I went down to the library where to see the trees. Was not a winner, but there were a lot of other people who were winners, and I think that I don't know what the total amount was for the Friends of the Library, but I heard it was a pretty good revenue generator. From there, I went to the Queer Craft Fair at the Labor Hall, and I hear they brought a total of more than 1,000 people to Berry City on a Saturday, and you could tell it. You could see it in the downtown. People were going to Cafe Bueno and walking around and spending money. And I mean, what an economic impact an event like that has. And I hope we can really, if they choose us again next year, that we can really promote that. I got to bump into a select board member I know in Waterbury who came all the way over and said it was fantastic. Also would echo Councilor Stockwell's note about childcare. We're both at that chamber breakfast, and it is disheartening how hard it is for workers to access affordable childcare. And it sounds like the legislature is really going to make this a priority this year. I understand maybe a priority for the speaker and the interfaces with a lot of initiatives we have going on, including the Working Communities Challenge to support women-headed households living in poverty, and kind of these ongoing conversations we have about community or youth center or summer or recreation programming for off-cycle schools. So it could be legislation that creates a new opportunity to do a private-public partnership, or think about buildings and facilities and how we can support the needs of people who need childcare and participate in the workforce. And with that, I think that's a lot of news. So with that, I'll say Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and any other holiday tradition or event you celebrate. And would staff like that?
I just wanted to, people are talking about the great things that have been happening and are happening in the city of Berry. I got an email from Dan Casey today, the director of the Berry Opera House, and they are hosting the Burlesque Festival on the 30th of January, and it's just been named as a top event by the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. So that's kind of cool.
Nice.
It is, at least in the last year, it is very fun. Right. It's spicy, a little spicy like Berry. All right, well, with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We adjourn at 8:30.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.